Good morning, good evening, and good afternoon, wherever you are in the world. And welcome to the Infinite Way, where spirituality meets humanity. And it brings me great pleasure to introduce Ms. Quanita Roberson. And let me tell you a little bit about her. Quanita is a facilitator dedicated to the addressing embedded trauma. She is a spiritual teacher, speaker, author, life coach, and a storyteller. Her work over the past 20 years has been focused in the areas of healing, intuition, grief, leadership, diversity, and inclusion. Recent work has included work with the Kellogg Foundation Truth, Racial Healing, and Transformation Program, and People's Action's Heartland Initiative, a listening tour of rural and small town America. Quanita has a background in organizational management and development with a concentration in integral theory, which has supported her in looking at the world in a more holistic way. She also has had the privilege of studying with some of the most amazing elders, including Sobonfu and Jojopah Maria Nsoroma, keepers of the ancient indigenous wisdom of the Dagara tribe in Burkina Faso. Fanchon Shur in Embodying Creative Leadership Through Growth in Motion, and Christine Baldwin and Linnea of the Circle Way. Welcoming Quanita Roberson. Welcome.
Hi, thank you. Thank you very much. It's so good to be here with you. I'm excited about wherever we go today together.
I am too. I am too. And welcome, welcome. And, it brings me such great pleasure to have you here because when I first met you and when we connected, I felt like it was heart to heart immediately. I felt like I was looking at my sister. I felt like I was just like, it just elevated and escalated and just made me feel so good inside, just raised. You bring so much to the table.
Oh,
You
thank you.
coach, you speak, you storytell. How did you get started? How did you
Oh,
find this path?
oh my goodness. So, it's always that's such a weird question because I always think like, where does it start, right?
Mhm.
So much of, all of our journeys start at the very beginning. And, and there's certain things that I just feel like I've promised to do this lifetime. And
Mhm.
for me, there's pieces, of course, my own initiation. One of the things that I haven't always appreciated, but I do now, the the archetype of the child archetype and the journeys that it takes us on. The child
Mhm.
archetype that we all carry. First of all, it shows up with a naive innocence. Well, one of the things that's required is that the innocence be betrayed. And then if we're doing our healing work, we can move into a renewed innocent with some discernment. And
Right.
so I think my journey started with that initiation of the innocence betrayed. It's my own trauma, which again comes with a gift, right? It's not just the trauma side of it if we go through it and do our healing work. And so I got access to some of what then was mine to do in the world.
Mm. Mm. So what happens is that when we have that betrayed, finding our way back and learning the lessons to look at what is taking place in our lives a different way, not on just the pain side of the way, but the way that allows us to overcome, step over, or push through, navigate through the story of the trauma,
Yes, yes,
or is usually the place for where others will find that path. And it happens to us. And that's
yes,
why, where does it begin for you?
yes.
Because if that's the case, what transition, what was the epiphany that you had? What was the leap in orbit that might have taken place for you to be able to say, I'm not going to be stuck in this story?
Yeah, I think for me, the place that I so often point to, and I don't know if this is the real place, of course, because so many other things lead up to it, right? But the
Sure.
place that so often comes up for me is at 15 deciding to press charges against my stepfather for sexual abuse.
Mm.
I remember he had confessed to my mother. They were Jehovah's Witnesses, and he confessed as part of his religious tradition at that point. And so I felt at the time that I was being even pushed into deciding to deal with it at a time that I didn't feel ready. Like, so not
Mm.
only, it felt like another violation to me that he even got to choose when it was time for me to deal with it. Of course, now it feels like, oh, what a blessing that I have over 35 years of healing under my belt at this age. You know, I could have waited. But then it didn't feel like a blessing. um,
Right. Right.
and then going to court, and I chose to go not because I felt like he needed to be punished, but because I felt like if I wasn't willing to stand up for myself, that I was going to die anyway.
Mm.
And so there was something about like, even if no one else would, I had to.
Right. Right.
And he pled guilty to a lesser charge and was sentenced 90 days to be served on weekends. And so I lived with him during the week and he went to jail on the weekends. And I thought I was going crazy. So I found a therapist that would work with me pro bono. I found a program it was actually a program called A Voice, Adolescent Victims of Indecent Sexual Encounters, that
Okay.
usually the teenager and then the non-offending parent attended. My mother didn't go with me. I went by myself. And it was like a 10-week program kind of deal. Um, and I just started on my journey. You know, it was like I I had to find my way out. And I think it's something that where did it start? I think there was something in me that just knew that I needed more, you know, and of course it wasn't always clear. I mean, I was in the psych ward twice as a teenager for, you know, being suicidal um and even that like part of the journey, right? Of um what I learned there and what showed up for me there. Yeah.
Yeah. You know, it's strange how when we go through trauma, that couple of things happen. One is that we either retreat and withdraw, or our
Mhm.
most courageous person comes forward, you
Yes.
know. And
Yeah. Well,
interesting. Go ahead. Go
I was
ahead.
just going to say, you know, someone said to me before, they're like, uh, so did you know how courageous you were to be standing in that courtroom on one side by yourself and your mother and your stepfather on the other side? And my answer to them was, no, it wasn't courage at all for me. It was, it was like, I it wasn't even a choice. It was one of those choiceless choices. Like I said,
Mhm.
I was going to die if I didn't do it.
Right.
It wasn't because it wasn't like I wasn't doing it because I felt like there was some sense of justice or he needed to pay or, you know, it was just like, how do I still be here tomorrow?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wow. So you go through this, there you are, this adolescent standing up for yourself. My God, what you represented in that courtroom was tremendous. And
Yeah.
so even though you don't see it as your most courageous self, thank God that your most courageous self was able to help you stand in your truth, because
Yeah.
that's what it takes. I work with women all the time, and it's like, learn how to stand in your truth. And there you are at an adolescent, standing in your truth, saying, I will not allow this to take place anymore,
Yes.
and I will speak my truth. And this is my story, and I'm standing in it no matter what anyone thinks. So, what happens next? What takes place next?
So, like I said, I was home with him, with my mother. And I even like I asked to be removed from the home. They said my mother hadn't done anything wrong and she was my guardian, so I couldn't be
Wow.
removed. Um, the social worker, her advice to me was to run away. And I was like, so then they're gonna pick me up as a runaway. I knew better than to do that. So
Right.
so I waited to my 18th birthday. You know, I went to a wonderful school at that point. I was at the School for Creative and Performing Arts here in Cincinnati, Ohio, which gave me a place to
Okay.
be. because it wasn't just the traditional hours of school. We had, I had a class before school at one point, and I had after school rehearsal often, or performances. I was in music theater, and we had an average of 2 performances a week. And so I was able to be someplace else. I think my 10th grade year, I maybe saw my mother and my stepfather just a handful of times, because they left before I got up in the morning, and I got home after they were asleep often, and so it just again allowed me a place to be. And not only that, I think, what the arts require of you is that you go inside yourself and pull what's inside out, you know? And so I was with a group of young people where we got to bear witness to each other's hearts on a daily basis. And this
Mm-hmm.
school was created to do integration through the arts. The district had been sued, claiming that the school district was racially segregated. And what they found is it was unintentionally segregated because the neighborhoods were so segregated. So this was one of the
Right.
schools that the district created to offer voluntary busing instead of mandatory busing. And
Okay.
it was created or developed by a handful of teachers who were Montessori trained teachers. So they understood community as well. And they
Okay.
taught us so often, and things like they knew we could do things even before we did. And
Mm-hmm.
so there were things that we would try and do. Like, I think the court for me, some of my ability, or to even think I could do something like that, I think came from that school. It came,
Okay.
matter of fact, I remember testifying in grand jury, which was about 4 or 5 blocks away from my school. And after testifying, going to school.
Wow.
Yeah.
Were the arts really healing for you? Because, like I've taken acting classes and whatnot when I was in high school and whatnot. And the fact that you get to go inside and you can bring forward a character or a part or a role, and then
Yes.
be that role in its entirety and its fullness, and then
Yes.
say what you say as that role, really, really allows you to release a lot
Yes.
of that pain that's inside of you through
Yes.
that character. So would you say that the arts really had a key handle into you navigating past this?
Definitely. One of my things that I would do regularly that was such medicine for me was we had a place called the Fine Arts Library. And the Fine Arts Library was right next to the regular library. And
Yeah.
it's this big open room that often just had fine arts hanging on the wall or arts in the room. And I remember I would go early in the morning before classes at school, and I'd go in the Fine Arts Library because there were very rarely anybody there. And
Mhm.
I would walk the perimeter and I would sing. I was a vocal music major.
Oh,
So
wow.
I'd sing classical Italian music. I would sing, um, musicals. I would sing some of the choir stuff we were working on. But what I often describe that time as is it felt like flying to me as I'm
Mm.
walking around the perimeters and I'm singing. There's this freedom that was in those moments for me. It's so interesting. I'm just tearing up thinking about it. How we can find these places. Uh, it's the internal freedom that we have access to for ourselves, and how brilliant our minds are to help us in these moments. That I knew to go there and to do that. Mm,
And
Yeah.
that I was always told and I was always taught that the person who has the most trauma coming through their lives make the best healers,
Yeah.
because you don't have to learn how to, for lack of better words, retreat within and go inside
Yes.
and reflect inwardly. Because, as a healer, it's all about the connection and inside and within the
Yes.
heart, and coming from that place in that space. I always love to call it the space of timelessness, the space in
Yes.
between.
Yes. Yeah.
And understanding that in acting, people find that space in between to draw
Mhm.
from, to draw those characters from.
Yes. Yes.
you know, and if
You
you really
step
want to
into
go
the
deep,
archetypes, right?
right,
Acting.
exactly.
Yeah.
They're drawing from the archetype. They're drawing from that other dimension of self. They're
Mm-hmm.
drawing from the other dimension of others, you
Yes.
know. But again, that reflection inward to know that there's a universe within there that we can draw from.
Yes. Yes. Mm-hmm.
And a lot of people don't realize that.
Yeah.
Would you
No.
say that this event that happened in your life, this circumstance that happened in your life, do you believe that that put you on the road towards healing in the life that you actually hold now?
I think I was already on it. I think, my parents were 15 when I was born. And I
Okay.
think there's something about like, you know, the sacred contracts that I had before I came here, right?
Okay.
And that was just a big place in calling me out, right? Like
Right.
it's like that was a piece of where it's like, at a certain point I remember uh sitting in the snow at Oberlin College praying to freeze to death. And and I didn't know then, according to the Dagara medicine wheel from Burkina Faso, I was a water spirit and the snow was the best place I could have been because it's the most healing space in that moment. And I just got really clear that I needed to decide in that moment whether I was going to stay here or not. And that it didn't matter if it was fast or slow, but to make a choice. And so my choice in that moment was that if I was going to live, I wasn't going to half ass it. I was going to really learn what it meant to be alive. And so many of my choices from that day forward was made that day, you know? Um, yes, I still have choice, but in some ways I've already made it.
Mm-hmm.
Oh,
Right. Because we've lived these lives before, and now what we're doing is we're calling it to us to experience what we've already lived.
yes.
I get it. And I'm so grateful you're here, and I'm so grateful that you made that choice because you are phenomenal,
Thank you.
phenomenal,
One of
tremendous
one of
speaker.
the
And
things I would say about that though is that that teenage girl that was in the psych ward that was suicidal could not have known
mhm.
like me here, right? And so to anybody who is feeling that way, I think so often we don't want to take our lives because we don't want to live anymore. I think it's because we don't know how to continue to live.
Mhm.
And it's like um people say time will do a lot of things. Time will, but it's not time alone. It's like time
No.
and, being curious, leaning into what else is here. One of my teachers, Jojopah Maria, says the world is out to gift us and not to get us. And so it's that piece of asking, why is this happening for me instead of to me? Trauma wants to be
Exactly.
healed. So
Mhm.
keep floating to the surface until we lean into it.
And the world had a lot to offer for you to participate in, for you to lead, for you to experience. Talk to us a little bit about Burkina Faso and how you ended up working with
Yeah, so
elders.
So it's interesting. I was working with an organization called Public Allies. Public Allies is a partial AmeriCorps funded program. And the organization, we were struggling. The organization wasn't struggling. The staff that I was a part of, we were struggling with our executive director. And I remember us
Mhm.
going to the all staff retreat, and our regional person, which happened to be Jojopah, uh, a regional person, we go up to her and we say, okay, so either the executive director has to go or we're all leaving. And what she said is, oh no, that's not how this is going down. If we can't do our healing in a social service organization, what chance do we have?
Oh,
And so they sent her to our site in Cincinnati for a week to do circle and ritual with us. It was when I was first introduced to the Dagara medicine wheel. And she
beautiful.
brought it and she asked us, sat in circle, asked us, what was blocking us from showing up, and had us be in circle. And before we're starting our next program year, where we're going to retreat with our new allies. And she came with us there and we did fire ritual to release what all the things we needed to let go to step into that journey fully. And so that was my beginning with the wheel. And
Beautiful.
and then shortly after, when we both left the organization around the same time, her mother had died and I had had a baby. I had my son Jacob, and she went on the road. She was on the road for 6 years, driving across the country where Spirit led her to go. And our house was one of the places that she would stop on the way to the East Coast, and she just started to teach me. And so that's my beginning in that journey, I would say.
You know, that's really powerful because a lot of people don't understand and don't recognize the medicine wheel.
Yeah.
And the medicine wheel is the one constant among everything.
Mm-hmm.
Everything, the circle one being a very, very sacred symbol. But the
Yes.
second is that the medicine wheel, like for Buddhists, it's the mandala, you
Yes.
know, but for Burkina Faso, it's the medicine wheel. For Native Americans, it's the medicine wheel.
Yes.
You know, it comes to us in so many different ways and so
Yeah.
many different um uh dimensions.
Yes. Well, and
And go ahead.
I was just going to say, and I would say that, the piece about listening to ourselves. I remember my first day at Public Allies. Jojopah happened to be in town. She lived in Milwaukee. She was at the national office, but she was in town right before she was leaving to go be with her mother as her mother was dying. And so I just saw her that first day. And then the next time I saw her was at that all staff retreat. And I remember going up to her, saying to her, "I've been waiting for you." No, I didn't know why. I didn't know why I was saying that to her. I just could feel it. And this piece about how often we know these things, but we don't speak them or trust them, or, and like I said, I didn't know why and I told her, I don't know why or where that comes from, but I've been waiting for you.
Mm-hmm.
And, now 20 plus years later, you know, she has been so many things for me and to me. Yeah.
That's so beautiful because I remember meeting my grandmother, my first elder that ever taught me, and sitting down with her, and I had been waiting for her. I had been waiting for her forever. And when she was like, "Yes, my girl, if you're really serious about studying with me, come up and see me sometime." And the fact that I was there and that that was it for life.
Yes.
You know, I had met my teacher, my mentor for life,
Yes.
and
Yeah.
would never change anything
Yeah.
to miss that opportunity. And then it just opened the door to so many beautiful people into my
Yeah.
life.
Yes.
So you mentioned quite a few. You mentioned a handful of teachers that were very, very
Yes.
meaningful in your life. Tell us a little bit
Yes.
more about some of the others.
Okay, so for one, Jojopah has studied with Melodoma and Sobonfu Somé of West Africa, Burkina Faso. And I've never personally got to meet Melodoma, but I did get to meet Sobonfu and to be in circle with her, which I loved. Some of the other teachers, I did a year-long apprenticeship with Fanchon Shur, who is this Jewish dancer diva woman. I was like, who I often joke with her that she showed up in my life to teach me audacity because she's just a force. She's one of those women who she decided that the Passover Seder was too boring, so she she had her husband help her write a whole new script and choreograph and write music for it. He was the director of liturgical studies at Hebrew Union College, and
Okay.
and she put dance to it and acting to it and brought in a gospel choir to the singing,
Oh,
and
wow.
would feed about, or for the Seder, we'd have about 250 people that would partake in that each year. And so just this force, and when she was in her 70s, decided that she wanted to teach a bunch of people everything she knew before she died, she said. And so we did this year-long journey with her. And it was so much about like getting into my body too. It's like, as a matter of fact, she called it the embodied creative leadership, was the training that she used. But she was such a gentle, in some ways, like gentle force, I'll say. I'll say both.
Okay.
So I remember her saying to me at one point, show up, I can take all of you, calling me out to really be present. And when I came back from Brazil, there was I did the keynote for the National Diversity Conference in Brazil, as well as in the 2 weeks I was there, held 10 circle conversations, mostly about healing the legacy of slavery for the African Brazilian people. And
Mhm.
I came back home and I had lost my voice because I had just it's talked so much. And 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 when I came back, she called me and said, "What can I do for you?" And I said, "Fanchon, I just need to rest. I just want, I was exhausted." And she says, "Well, let me tell you what you're gonna do. You're gonna come to my house on the Sabbath, and I'm gonna cook for you and feed you, and then I'm gonna put you on my table and do body work for you on you, and then we're gonna sit on the couch and I'm gonna hold you, and I'm gonna care for you as much as you will allow me to, as you tell me about your journeys in Brazil." And that's what
Mm.
I did. You know.
Wow.
And so this piece about being eldered, well, Jojopah came to my house when my mother-in-law was dying and took care of our kids and cooked and cleaned so we could go back and forth to the hospital as much as we wanted. Um, Christina Baldwin has been such um, a teacher, not only in my writing for me, because she hosted these workshops called Self as the Source of the Story, that I always told her every time I left her, I felt more like a writer than I did. I usually don't feel like a writer, but even though now I keep saying I'm starting to try to claim that author title. I have 3 books and a chapter in another one. So I think it's time for me to stop ignoring that part of me. But she also, when I was going to Brazil, said to me, every world traveler needs to be sent off and received back. And she says, I'll send you off and receive you back. And so she'd asked me to take a picture of myself and to send it to her. She printed it out, put it on her altar. And then when I got back, called me to receive me back, And so these people who have just shown up when I've needed them to. Um, One other thing I'll say that I love about having more than one elder or teacher is that it really supports the integration instead of the imitation. We're in
Yes.
a culture that does so much imitation, but I was able to then say which pieces of this is for me, which pieces of this is for me, and not try to be them.
Exactly. And I really know what you mean about that because, like, my journey, as you know, a little bit about, I've been able to work with so many different cultures and so many different people. And, from the New Zealand Waitahas to the Ojibwe to the Kirill Indians of Peru to the Ovumbundu here in Angola, a little bit of everything. And people will go, well, so who are you? Tell me about yourself and give me that label. And I'm like, I'm the world.
Yeah.
There are aspects of me. I love to say the different aspects of the different facets of me that make up me. And that's why part of it is like, okay, Enolia, the name Enolia means old soul who brings light into the world.
Yeah.
And that's what I am. I'm just an old soul that's remembering from here and from here and from here and from here. And I am those people. I
Yeah.
am that teaching. And I don't have to label myself as one thing. And
Yeah.
so, you know, I'm just an old soul that's remembering. And when I learn about a culture and I embrace a culture, it's because there's a part of me that has already been there, that has always been there,
Yes.
and I really believe that the elders see it in us. They
Yeah.
see it in us, which is why they approach us the way that they do.
Yes. Yes.
And
And
it's beautiful.
yes. And I think I was saying to someone yesterday, my Aunt Mary, who's my mother's oldest sister, said to me once, nothing belongs to you.
Mm,
And it's this thing of really getting, it's, I think, both. Nothing belongs to you and everything belongs to you,
right.
you know? And
Yes.
so it's this piece around, what I hear in you speaking about being in parts of all this. It's all of you, right? It's all of us. It's because we not only belong to each other, we are each other.
Yes.
And so how can I find this piece of me or that piece of me? Where are the different places that help me to find myself in ways that I didn't know myself before?
Exactly. And just where am I called?
Yes.
Where am I called? Spirit is
Yeah.
leading me here. And so therefore there's a part of me that's here. And
Yes.
spirit is leading here. Therefore there's a part of me that's there. You
Yes.
know, I remember when you were telling me that you lived in Ohio and then you were asking me about Serpent Mountain. I'm like, oh my God, that was like home. That
Yes.
was literally like home. And then it's like, okay, I met another person who understands what home is.
Yes.
When we
Yes.
talk about something sacred and something so ancient and something so beautiful.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Which leads me to asking you to elaborate on your books. Tell us a little bit about the books and the stories that you wrote.
Yeah. Yeah. So the first one is Soul Growing, and it's wisdom for 13-year-old boys from men around the world. And
Mm,
it's kind of interesting because it didn't start off to be a book. It started off to be a gift for a 13-year-old boy that I knew at the time. And the men
okay.
were actually who said this needs to be a book for more than just him. He had turned 13, and my hope was to just get 13 quotes by men that I knew that where I asked them to complete the sentence, I wish somebody would have told me blank when I was 13. And what I didn't count on when I did it through Facebook Messenger, and I just did a group of men that I knew and sent them all this question. And so they got to see each other's response. And so then they started talking to each other across, oh, I wish I would have known that too. Or, oh, and one person's like, this is like church, right? And what I realized in hearing these men was that we're asking our men for so many things, but not their wisdom. And they're
Mhm.
hungry to share it.
Wow. That's
And yeah, yes. And, there's a piece that a friend told me years ago around we get it backwards. We think that men carry the power and women carry the love. But when we're at our best, it's just the opposite. When we're at our best, the men show up in pure love, they'll serve until. And women show up and use their power. They're the ones in the village that says it's time to stop. You've fished enough fish, you've chopped enough wood, right? And we've forgotten to carry our power as women, and men have forgotten to carry their love. And so I think
right.
what happened in this book is unbeknownst to me, I used my power to create space for these men's love, and they filled it more than I could have ever imagined. You know,
I love this. I really do. And I want to make sure that our audience and the people understand that when you talk about when the women carry their power, this isn't about control. This isn't
no,
about power over
not
anyone.
at all.
This is about standing in your truth, standing
Yes.
in your worthiness, standing in your understanding, and then being able to speak your truth and be respected for what you're bringing to the table, not that you're trying to control
Well, I
somebody.
think it's because so often we mistake when we talk about power, we're only talking about external power.
Exactly.
But, that's incomplete because internal power is more powerful than external power.
Yes.
External power changes when conditions change. It's like your job or your marriage or your money, right? But internal power, when you
Exactly.
found it, you have it forever, you know? And
Always.
also because the external reflects the internal. As you step more and claim more of your internal power, the external reflects that.
Exactly. Exactly that. It couldn't be more well stated than that.
Yeah.
So that's a powerful book. And again, say the name of
So
it so our audience can hear it
it's
so they can
it's
write it
so
for their boys.
yes, soul growing wisdom for 13-year-old boys from men around the world. And then the second one is soul growing too, wisdom for 13-year-old girls from women around the world. And what I
Yeah.
love about both these books is they're all the quotes in them, like the boys has over 50 or 66 quotes, I think. And it's from men from 17 different countries, different ages, but they're all men that I know. And only I think two of them in the book knew Jason at that time, who I wrote the book for.
Okay.
So I love that they just showed up and offered, right? And then the book that the newest book I have out is called The Inner Ground Railroad, the 40-day journey to remember self and spirit, or soul and spirit. And it's designed to heal the ancestor legacy of slavery for all of us. You know, one of the things I believe is bondage is bondage. And so it doesn't matter who we are. It's like what enslaves you. I talk about the slave archetype. The shadow side of the slave archetype is being a slave to a person, a thing, or even an idea. The light side of the slave archetype is being a slave to the divine spirit within. It actually teaches us self-mastery. It's how we find our freedom. You know, one of the biggest misconceptions here in the West and the US is that the legacy of slavery is just carried by people of color. But to enslave another, you have to be enslaved as well. And I think it's so hard though when you're the ones making the laws and the rules. You know, we're in a very Eurocentric culture. It's hard to even see you're wounded or that you're enslaved to do your healing.
Right.
We're not conscious of it. We can't choose to tend to it. And I often say, you know, in a time of like allyship, I often say, I don't want you to be my ally. I want you to heal your own damn self. I want you to know that this affects you and that you're not doing it to do me a favor. But because we are connected, when you do your healing, there's a piece of me that's healed too. Yeah.
Because it's how you relate to me. It's the interrelationship. It's how
Yes.
you perceive me. It's how you perceive the world. It's how you treat me. It's how you treat the world. It's how you navigate through the world. All of these pieces are reflected back through our experiences.
Yes, because we can't give what we don't have. So if you don't have a particular love and care and compassion for yourself, there's no way you can give it to me.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
Right. Wow. Powerful books. Powerful.
Yes.
Thank you. Which has to have led to your storytelling, right?
Yes. So, well, you know, I think one of the things I'll say, there's one more book that I have a chapter in that I'll mention here, and it's Spiritual Healing and Sexual Violence. And so it's a book that's used actually at the university to, and it's just these different spiritual approaches to healing sexual violence in ourselves. And so I was asked to write a chapter in that book. And frankly, I didn't think it was going to happen. It was just kicking my butt. So I was like, you know, some of those things and just showing me some places that was wanting to be healed more in me and doing it, right? That's why it would show up for me at that point. And so I have that piece there that I think is important to mention here too.
It's very important because those who have gone through sexual violence, the release of it, whether it's written, whether it's verbal, whether it's through storytelling, whether it's just relating within a group of like-minded people, whatever the case may be, you have to release it. There's an exercise of release. There's an exercise of navigating through the story so that you're not stuck in it and you're not just circumventing the same story over and over and over and in the pain of it.
Yes, yes. And the storytelling, like in the Underground Railroad, one of the things I do with the Dagara medicine wheel is I tell my fire story and my water story and my nature and my mineral and my earth stories, right? And so there are pieces from my life. And of course, there's so many more stories, you know, but I think part of what that book had me really claim is the storytelling part of me. I think I've always been one that has told stories in the way of communicating where I am because first of all, I'm dyslexic. And so I think when I was younger, I didn't write a lot. And so I would tell the stories. But for a long time, you know, it was like, felt like, oh, you just talk too much, right? So like, instead of like really claiming that part of me that, oh no, this is how, and that's how spirit works so often. When we have a spiritual experience, there's no language for it. There's no words. And so we go into metaphor. It was like, you know, to explain what has happened. And so much of my life has been that.
Wow. Wow. So I want people to be able to know what work you're doing right now and how they can get in contact with you and how they can reach out to you and participate in your programs because to not share that side of you would just be a disservice to everyone because you do some powerful work. So please talk about the training programs and things that you're doing right now, right here and now that are so important to the world.
Yeah. So one of the things that I'm excited about that's coming up at the beginning of the year too is we have a wisdom series that we do, and it's online. And so there's two different times offered. I'm in the Eastern time zone. And so we do a one at noon and then one at 7 p.m., which allows for a wide range for people to tap into no matter where they are in the world. Um, and the first wisdom series that we have at the beginning of this year is around our relationship to forgiveness. And it's one that I often will say I'm the promise of forgiveness and reconciliation in the world. And I think I come back to this time and time again, this relationship to forgiveness, because I don't think we always understand it's a relationship. And
Hmm.
I don't think we really know how to forgive. I think it's a divine thing. I think we just have to be willing. And so often my prayer around forgiveness is enable me to know what it feels like to have let this go. And
Yeah.
so, what it does is it's a 4-week series. And so each week we have a different focus. Like one week, I think the focus is grief, another is surrender, it's these different parts of forgiveness. And and then our next wisdom series that we're doing this coming year is a relationship to friendship. And
Hmm.
then our last one in the year will be relationship to the whales and the whale
Yeah.
medicine,
Near and
which
dear to my heart that we
yeah.
talked about.
Yeah. So I'm excited about that. We're currently taking applications. I do a 16-month leadership rites of passage cohort for adults. And we're in the last week of accepting applications for this next cohort, which starts in February. And we will open up applications in August of next year for the next cohort, which will start the following February. But this is our 4th cohort. And the whole idea was we're such an adolescent adult culture. And so how do we grow up adults into
Hmm.
initiation? And so this is a leadership rites of passage program that I'll say journey more than program, because it takes you on a journey. That during the 16 months we're together, we have 3 in-person retreats. And I've just seen community be built, connections. I've seen people take on their own healing and transform and stay to help others. So I'm probably most proud of that. And I also do circle work. So we have a circle immersion retreat that we do. I don't think it's posted yet for next year, but it'll be posted soon. And it's a Wednesday through Sunday in-person circle retreat. And what I love about it is it really focuses on the essence of circle first
Hmm.
instead of the teaching first. I think so often the way we do things, we teach and then we ask people to practice, which really encourages imitation instead of integration. And so what
Right.
we've done is we flip it. We spent about 2.5 days on just the energetics of circle. So you can feel it in your body. And then we do the methodology of circle to say, this is what was happening. And I think that makes all the difference. And we do an online circle, the essence of circle practice 4-hour kind of training too. There's one scheduled in December that's full, but we have another one scheduled. I think it's in April of next year that is already on the calendar. Yeah.
Beautiful work. Right down my alley. I love this. I love hearing
Yes.
this because I'm all about the circle and
Yeah.
everything.
The,
How can people reach you? How can they
yes.
find out what's going on, your schedule, connect?
Yes. Yes. So I'll also say I do lots of consulting work with companies, and
Okay.
organizational development is part of my training and how to look at things in a holistic way. So I get to do a lot of that too. Um,
Okay.
and for international coaching as well. But the way to find out about what I'm doing is my website. It's my company's name is Nzuzu. It's Nzuzu. And so you can find me at nzuzu.com. And it has all the different offerings. And yes, so
And just through NZUZU?
yes.
Okay. .com.
And that has my coaching information. All of it is there.
Okay.
Um, and the blog
Excellent.
post and also the podcast that I do. And so it gives lots of spaces, and the books are also posted there.
And the reason I want to make sure that people do that is because people are seeking. They're seeking.
Yeah.
They need this information. I will make sure that I post it in the YouTube place that we have here, or when they see it live streamed, when they see this podcast live streamed on StreamYard, they'll be able to go in the description and be able to reach out to you.
Wonderful.
So give our audience that breath of wisdom before we go. What is the thing that you would like to leave them with?
I think it's that the questions make all the difference. I think we're a world that has such a low question literacy rate. And the questions when things show up in my life, instead of asking, why is this happening to me? Even just switching it to why is this happening for me changes everything. And so getting really good at questions, asking what's the question underneath the question, because usually the first question we come up with isn't the real question, right? So what's underneath?
Right.
And so getting, curious so that we can step into spaces that we may not have gone before.
It's so beautiful. Quanita Roberson, thank you. Thank you so much for being a guest here on The Infinite Way, to share your heart, to share your wisdom. This beautiful elder and this beautiful leader is available to you. So reach out at nzuzu.com. That's nzuzu.com, and speak with Quanita Roberson.
Thank you. Thank you for inviting me.
Thank you so much. Always. And we'll see you soon. Bye-bye.